Hello and welcome to the Production Pod, a place where we meet and talk all things creative production, from TV broadcast, commercial and film. A place where we unite with industry professionals. Firstly, I'm Craig Reeves, an online finishing artist, and I niched down in the world of post-production after being introduced to long-form workflows back in the early days of my career. To harbour these skills and add a virtual spin to the post-production facility, I set up a company named Pickled with my business producing partner Danny Jones in 2017. Along my journey, I've met many inspiring individuals who are passionate about the creative industry, and well, this is why I find myself here, hoping to delve into the minds of those who are successful in their fields and hopefully pass this knowledge and their experiences on to you through your ears via this very pod. Everybody has a different story to tell, and with their own ambitions, challenges, and skills. Today, we're talking with Adam Fenwick. I've known Adam since 2006, where we first met at a company named Ragdoll Productions. Adam is a flame artist. What is a flame artist, I hear you cry? Well, let's find out. Adam Fenwick, flame artist.
Right.
Good. What is... I mean, I do flame. I'm a flame artist, and people, whenever I talk about flame to them that aren't in the industry, they presume that they know I work in video, and they presume that I'm putting flames into pieces of video, which isn't the case, is it, Adam? So, what is a flame artist?
Well, sometimes you're asked to put flames into the things, but that is not the main role of the job. You're essentially sort of working across the whole project. So whether that's in like TV or broadcast or film work, you are essentially sort of overseeing the visual effects process on a project. So you'll essentially be working with the director and the creative agency producers right from the beginning of the job in pre-production. So you'll have meetings to discuss.
This is for TV commercial work.
So for example, a TV commercial, you'll meet beforehand to discuss the visual effects requirements. You know, whether that's shooting someone on green screen or tracking in like a new environment, extending sets. You sort of discuss the nature of the work before it goes into production. And then, usually, you will have had a chat with the DOP and the first AD, before shooting, started turning over. So everyone's clear on, what we need before we shoot. So as long as you've had time to but
you ever had that awkward conversation where you're having to say, can we just get the shadows off the green screen? But you can do that in post, right? You can get rid of that. I shot loads of things with shadows on the green screen, and that's never been a problem. And I'm like going, well,
it's essentially they're moving the problem from production into post, and if you can solve it before, then it just means it'll actually probably save even more money fixing it beforehand. And going through the flame, it's sort of like the hub of the project where you will sit with the director and the creative, the creatives, and you'll sort of bring it all together.
But what would you say Flame has as an advantage over maybe any other current other softwares that are out there? Because Foundry Nuke do a studio, but where does Flame sit in the market? Why do you think it's such a
it's always seen as the high-end solution because it's so interactive, and it's perfect for those quick turnaround projects. It's such a varied role that's why it's such a fun job, really.
But now I suppose there's more onus on the flame artist, whereas it once was maybe two people's jobs to conform and edit and provide VFX. Now it's more on one person, right?
That's right. Yeah. So not only handling the compositing visual effects side, but also handling several edits for one commercial, and then doing all the various deliverables that now go with every campaign. It's not just doing a TV delivery now. It's TV plus social media versions and Facebook and Instagram and and all the digital out of home. It's any one project can have 150 deliverables and versions. So it's not just about creating that one ad anymore.
It's a lot of heads that you have to, or a lot of hats, should I say, that you have to put on as a flame artist. You know, you're not. I think back in maybe like 20 years ago, if you're a flame artist, you wouldn't have ever touched a timeline. You know, whereas now you're expected to not only use the timeline, but like you say, create many versions from that timeline, varying crops and what have you. So it's, I suppose they're getting more bang for their buck, do you reckon, now than they were?
You certainly have to do a lot in the process. Yeah,
well, it's become a lot more versatile.
Great, I wouldn't change it.
No, because you're freelance, right? So you don't work for just one facility. You're spread across a number of facilities, which predominantly are in London.
I'd say that's the most. Majority of the work is London based. Just the nature of the job. It's so collaborative, working with the directors and the creatives. It's I think it does help the process to sort of be involved and have those conversations. In the suite.
Yeah. So do you find that each company that you work for has different ways of doing things that you have to quickly adapt to? Do you find that your job has to change depending on which company you're working for, or is it quite formulaic? Like, you're a flame artist and that means the same for each of these companies, or is it different?
The skill set's always the same in terms of the tasks that you have to do, but every company works in a different way. So, you may be working somewhere that has like a linear pipeline. So you're using those, working in that color space, or you may be somewhere else that has a different way of using the software, that may grade all the work, and you work on the graded material rather than working native at source. So it's adapting really to each company's sort of workflow, whether they're working in log, and then it's just, you just adapt to
log is a color space, by the way. It's not just you're not working on trees.
Sure.
you're not a lumberjack working on log. That's a color space for anyone listening that doesn't know what that means. So I suppose quickly adapting to wherever you are, and bringing your skill set to the table. And I suppose you never really get a brief about what it is that you might be working on until your bum's on that seat, right? So you might get booked up somewhere for a week and you not necessarily know what the job's going to be until you're there, or am I wrong there?
More often than not, you'll start a project and not know what you've got ahead of you. But sometimes you will have had a conversation before the project starts. Particularly obviously if you're involved in the shoot, and and you're going to be leading that project, then you will have an idea on what you've got to do. But but sometimes you can turn up and tackle that fresh challenge on the day, and but that's part of the fun, really. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, this is true. And learning on the job very quickly sometimes as well.
Well, it keeps it fresh, doesn't it?
It does. So you and I worked, I first met you in 2006 at a company named Ragdoll Productions, which is in Stratford-upon-Avon. And I was a runner. I was making you tea and coffee and trying to make you laugh in hope that you would show me some tutorials or show me how to do some things with the kit. So that wasn't your first job. What was your first job in the industry, and how did you get to where you are now? How did you, what was your journey from start to finish, I suppose, is the question.
Right after I graduated from Staffordshire Uni, I did a degree in animation, and I met an animation director called Sean Mayer, and I was really lucky, and he'd asked me to come into his studio called SMA Studios, and he'd asked me to sort of be his one of his assistants, and I'd sort of really focused on doing traditional 2D animation. Like, that was what I enjoyed doing throughout uni, and he had some projects for Strepsils and for Co-op, and I essentially sort of became his assistant for the summer, and just like learned so much, and it was great. I basically just learned how to do Toon Boom. So we did all the traditional animation, pencil and paper, scanned everything in, and did all the sort of ink and paint in Toon Boom and the compositing, and it was just such a great way into the industry, and it sort of set me on the path to compositing and visual effects, because that's where I sort of learned how to do After Effects and combustion, which are the tools that we used for doing post production. So doing combustion is what sort of led me into getting the job at Ragdoll, and what essentially took us to Stratford-upon-Avon to sort of really, that's where I then sort of progressed my career in visual effects.
You're from Manchester originally, right? So you moved to Stratford for the job at Ragdoll.
That's right, yeah, and stayed in this area ever since.
Yeah. And we were at Ragdoll together for about, I think 7 years, maybe. I think you were there about a year before I was.
Yeah.
So when I started as a sales runner, then became like a VFX assistant for you guys, thanks to you guys, because you were like wanting me to work with you and you wanted to train me. And yeah, like you say, it was very much combustion and After Effects. And then there was the Flames, what were then called Flint, which became, well, I don't think they still do Flint, right? I think it is just Flame now. And obviously we were wanting to get on those machines. And a lot of that is like learning on the job, right? We're very fortunate to have those machines sitting in the studio, and we had access to them after hours to be able to sit and learn. That was invaluable, I suppose. I mean, not many places outside of London had that kit, right? That was quite unique.
Yeah, and learning it wasn't so easy then, was it? It was, I mean, there's so many resources now online with the the Facebook Logic forum and all the Grant K YouTube learning channel. That there's so many ways to learn software now. And
I suppose back then, the Flame was very much locked to like £100,000+ system, whereas now you can get it on a Mac and you can get like a student version of it. So it's it's not very easy, should I say. It's more accessible now for people to learn it and learn it at home. Whereas in our day, I mean, I hadn't even heard of this software before we started working at Ragdoll. And then you find out how kind of almost bespoke it is, how unique it is. Then you feel very privileged to have access to it, which then, setting up workflows on the Flame eventually in the last few years for the series called Abney and Teal, because Ragdoll Productions make children's TV. So they're in the Night Garden, Abney and Teal, and a series called Tronji that we worked on. I suppose that was long form. That was over a couple of years working on one show, creating a workflow within the Flame. And that then gave us the foot in the door in London when we were made redundant back in 2012. We were able to then use those skills and take them down south.
That's right.
Tentatively and nervously at the time, I remember.
But, no, it was the best move I ever did, because working in TV advertising is such an eye opener, and a world away from sort of long form broadcast work. It's the turnaround timescales is just couldn't have prepared for how different that was. But that I think that now that really does sort of keep you on your toes, really, because every project is so different, and you have to sort of creatively problem solve issues on every TV ad, and you never have enough time to get it done, really, but it always comes together in the end.
Yeah. So you talk about these TV commercials and what have you. What's been your favorite, like creatively or just from a workflow perspective? What's been your favorite job, and what's also been in the same breath your most challenging project that you've worked on? So you can pick either one that you'd like to speak about first. But
I mean, the thing is, we sort of work on so many TV ads. It's hard to sort of pick one out. I remember I'd worked on a job for it was a job for Domino's That was working with a director called Chris Randall, who we know from Second Home Studios, and that was working through Coffee and TV. And this ad for Domino's was really good fun to work on. Involved a lot of stop motion animation, food that was sort of jumping into a pizza box, and it was sort of combining all of those elements and all the cleanup and rig removal process and creating all the artwork was just like a really fun project. And that was one, but then other jobs can be the sort of all of the invisible effects work, the TV ads where you watch and you don't know that any work has been done. There's so many ads where you've had to sort of clean up, remove objects and items in shots, or it might be on a talent's face. You might have to do beauty work and work that's just invisible. But I think that it's the stuff that I enjoy the most. Where
I have to say I find that the most interesting.
You might not necessarily see a big flashy effect, but it's
trying to explain to somebody that shot might have taken you like 3 days because somebody was having a cigarette in the back of the take, or like there was something there that needed to be removed, or the product needed a bit more of a pop or adding into the back of the scene or something. Like I suppose there's more of what you don't see in these TV commercials than what you do. That makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, so what about the most challenging project that you've ever come across?
I mean, every job has its challenges, but the one I remember that was the worst was I'd taken on this project. It was the first sort of remote job I'd taken on, and I'd agreed to do 3 or 4 shots of this music video, where the talent was in a studio with a black screen surrounding, and basically there was a 360-degree dolly track going around in the middle of the set, and the talent was dancing in the middle, and the job that we had was to remove this track, but there was lighting flashing in the scene. The talent had a semi-transparent outfit on that was going over the tracks, with all the lighting flashing. It was quite an involved sort of process. And while I initially thought there was going to be 3 or 4 shots, over the space of like a week, which seemed manageable, by the time the job landed, I had about 25 shots to do, and still turn it around in the short space of time. So I remember there was a few late nights on that one, and but
which I suppose leads us on to the next question, which is having 2 heads, like 2 hats to wear, because you're a creative at the end of the day. You're producing creative material or content. On the other hand, you have to run your business, right? You have to liaise with producers, come up with timings of how long things are going to take based on usually nothing or very little being, like a storyboard. So it might not even be shot yet. How do you find with the 2 heads? Are you good at flicking between them, or do you find it a challenge to sometimes get out of one space into another?
I think it's all one thing, really, because being a freelancer, I mean, you're essentially your own business, generating your work with the clients you work with, but you essentially build relationships with the places that you work at. You get to know the creative teams and the producers, and they know you and the work that the work that suits you, and you've got experience in delivering jobs in the past, so you've got that rapport and the relationship. So I think creatively and business wise, I think it goes sort of hand in hand, really.
Yeah, it's part of being the freelancer that you have to be able to do accounting and I suppose sometimes say no to something, or at least be real about a situation that the person you're speaking to, might not necessarily realize the complexities of what they're asking of you. I suppose that must be sometimes quite difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Looking back now on that worst project I did, I should have been clearer about, finding out how many shots I was going to have to do in that space of time, and
Yeah. So not
uh,
only do you have to build up confidence in your creative offering, but you also have to have confidence in the business side. Yeah, so we've mentioned like London. So basically, a lot of this work is in London. There's not many flame suites outside of London. How have you found working in London? And yeah, I suppose that's where it's at, right?
pretty much. I mean, obviously there is a industry all over the country, but in terms of like flame work, I'd say most of that side of things is based in London.
Mm.
It's just it's where all the agencies and creatives and people like to work.
Yeah.
So that's essentially where I go where the work is, and
Yeah, I think there is definitely there's a London quality about what we do. If you've got London, I probably controversially saying that, but I mean a lot of the work is in London, but then also it is perceived as a quality. And it's going to be interesting, I think, because we're currently recording this amidst the COVID-19 lockdown. So, things are changing in the way that more and more work has been going remote anyhow, but this is really forms as like a catalyst for the remote working. I mean, ourselves, I live the other side of Stratford upon Avon, and Adam, you live the other side to me from Stratford upon Avon, and we commute down to London for the work. London, which started off as Soho and got into the NoHo, then outskirts of London to then like Oxfordshire, where the commuter belt started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've just always lived, kind of in Stratford for like family reasons, and commuted in, stayed where we have to, and what have you. But it'll be interesting to see how the industry now changes with remote work. What are your thoughts on where it's going?
I mean the remote workflow. It's not anything new, is it? I mean, we've collaborated on projects remotely, probably like 10 years ago, working on Project Pilsner Earthquake. It's that was done entirely remotely through through Skype and Dropbox, and it's been around for a while, but it was never really adopted as the favored sort of workflow. I'd like to think that if there's anything positive to come out of the COVID-19 sort of crisis, that in terms of our industry, hopefully working remotely becomes more accepted, and shows that how doable it actually is. Whether you're using your own kit at home, or whether you're sort of working remotely through the client systems, through
like logging into their systems remotely rather than having your own kit. I suppose there's a lot to be said for where technology has gone in the last few years. I mean, Flame is no longer like a system that requires hardware locked graphics cards and what have you. It's now a lot more accessible. They put it on Mac however many years ago, maybe like 8 years ago, like you say, seven or so years ago. And yeah, it's a lot more accessible now, and it runs on lesser systems, I suppose, but probably better than it did on the old systems that were more expensive back then.
That's it. Just made it much more accessible now, and and hopefully that'll be a good thing for us, sort of, in the future.
Yeah, well, like you say, I suppose the hours and creatively you may need to spend longer on something than you first anticipated, or you've got your head into a space which takes the job away from the typical 9 to 5, I suppose. I mean, you could be working till the early hours of the morning on a creative in just one shot. I suppose the option of working remotely in your own space allows you a bit more flexibility with home life and not having to sit on a train commuting after a long day. That's the positives of it, right? But then what the negatives would be that you're less client facing, and I suppose you're less able to tackle the situation with somebody sat next to you over your shoulder. Maybe I don't know. What would you say what
I
weighs
think
it
it's
up?
still good to have that, in-person contact, and being in a studio. You can't be sort of, speaking face to face with, the creative teams and the agency creatives. I think it helps, being in the same room and solving problems, and but certainly parts of the job, for sure you can tackle those processes completely remotely, and with the internet being so fast now, and tools like Zoom and Skype and Slack and WhatsApp, you can quite quickly collaborate with other flame artists, sharing setups.
It's interesting that you mentioned about us working on that Pilsner Urquell job, which was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, like you say. I mean, I remember we used to have our iPads and we would sit them on the desk with Skype, with just pointing at ourselves as if we were sitting in the same studio, and we'd forget that one another was on the Skype until you heard someone sneeze. We would be there working away. It seems... Yeah, that doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but that was quite a long time ago now. And you think, actually, there's nothing with the remote workflow now that's any different. People are still using, like you say, the Skype and Zoom and video calling. And I mean, I find it a lot. It's a lot easier to communicate with somebody when you can just send them a message or get onto Skype, because you're not having to get off your bum and move to another office and cause a distraction, or something that can take 5 seconds over a text could take 10 minutes by walking around or bumping into Barry at the water cooler and having a chat. So there's an element of more efficiency, but then there's also an element of sometimes it is great to just actually have that face-to-face chat. So
I think you can be more productive working remotely, in that you can set your own timetable, in that, you can sit down at the desk, an hour earlier than you normally would, having saved that commute, sit at the desk at 8 a.m, get an hour done, and then, at least now you can have breakfast with the family and then get back to work, lunch with the family. You can make the work sort of work around your day, and you're still getting, the same hours, if not more, done, more productively. And I think it's probably good for your mental well-being as well, actually being in a, environment. And
it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Because working remotely myself, you find yourself sometimes going stir crazy, and just a simple trip to the supermarket can be the kind of people boost that you need when you've been sitting in front of a machine all day. And even when you've been talking to somebody over a video call, you do crave that, to somebody handing you back your change and saying, have a nice day. You can become a bit isolating. But on the other hand, I feel like I do become more efficient working remotely. I find that you have to have certain ways of working that you might not get straight away. The amount of times, and this is my one bugbear, is when you're working on a creative piece and your mindset is very much in the complications of how you've built this shot creatively, is you also have to manage the communication side of things. So you might have another artist or a producer that you're collaborating with messaging you or keeping you up to date on the project. And sometimes that there can be too much information. In particular, when somebody's writing a message and they say, you'll say that I'm guilty of this. You'll write a message, go, "Hi, Adam," enter, bing, just letting you know, bing, that that shot, bing, is in the Dropbox folder, bing. And meanwhile, you're sitting there and you're really trying to get your head into this space. And like, I've just sent you like 7 messages which could have been just sent in one. And then it becomes very distracting. So I think that's something, if anyone can take anything away from this, is please, if you're going to send a message, just send one message. Don't send 5 when you can send 1.
Exactly.
Because that can be very, very distracting. And also trying to keep on top of emails. If you've got like jobs that are coming up, and you're trying to like quote on projects and what have you, it's dividing your time, not allowing those emails to distract from working creatively. I don't know if you find that frustrating or a challenge at times, if you've really got your head into a shot, or you probably manage it really well being super duper.
No, it's part of the job, isn't it? You could be, you've got your head, in a really tricky shot. You're comping, head replacement, or comping some CG crowd into a background or something, and then you've still got to keep on top of the emails that might pop up and then say the whole edit's changed, a day before delivery. So then you have to park that and, reorganize the edit. And so it's, that goes hand in hand, I think, managing emails and changes and
Yeah, I suppose it's something that we as a generation are getting better at. I suppose if we're the generation that didn't have this remote and constant connectivity, it's very different, isn't it? You'd have a producer and that producer would only tell you the information you need to know. Whereas now you're sitting on, emails that you're CC'd on and they're coming in all day, every day. And you're just keeping an eye on what's happening and trying not to make sure that you miss anything that you need to specifically see out of those email threads because it relates directly to what you're doing creatively. Sometimes it's bliss when you don't have any of that and you just got the producer telling you, this is what you need to know. You don't need to know about Carol, who's off today. That can be quite frustrating. But then on the other hand, if you weren't privy to that information, you might be trying to get hold of Carol all day and getting frustrated about why she's not picked the phone up. So it works both ways. So, I guess, we've talked about how the industry's changed. Have you anything to elaborate on how you may have seen it change from the beginning?
The industry's always changing, isn't it? Whether you're working from one company to the next with different, each place having their own workflows, but overall, everything's changing in terms of the software. Flame's always got new tools coming out every year, or, there's new cameras and formats and color spaces that come up that you have to sort of adapt to and learn. So I think you're constantly evolving, and you can never sort of sit still in the industry. There's always something new to learn. So, but it's good. It keeps you sort of on your toes, really, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So, as an accomplished flame artist now, and when I was at university, I certainly didn't know what a flame artist was. So I'm just thinking if there was anybody that was looking to get into the industry, what advice would you give them? Or even if there's somebody already in the industry is looking to move into this space, what advice would you offer?
Well, really, most people probably would have gone through uni, and done a course in media or, in visual effects or gone on an escape course. So I think most students will have put together some sort of coursework or some shots and sequences they've worked on. So just, like everyone else, just put together a short showreel of your best bits of work and, get that sent out to all the companies you're interested in and speak to the talent managers and hiring managers and just get a job as a runner and just get your foot in the door in a company like what you did, and then you can at least see all the processes and the different roles there are in a post-production house, and then you can actually learn on the job and hopefully work your way up.
Good advice, sound advice. Hopefully people are still listening to us. That's been great chatting, matey. And
you too.
Appreciate your time. And we will hopefully speak again after the coronavirus. It'd be great to find out, maybe give it a few months or whatever after we've all gone back properly and just see how things have changed. It'd be good to catch up again then.
It'd be good to see you in person.
It would be great. I mean, you don't live that far away from me, and you might as well be on the moon. It's mad just to see people. Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
All right. Cheers, Craig.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
So thanks to Adam and for you for making it this far. Really is appreciated. These talks and, podcasting in general is pretty new to me, but I hope you've taken something from what we've discussed today. You're welcome to share this pod, comment wherever you find that you're able to comment, and I will do my best to improve, delve further, and ask any questions that you guys wish me to ask and discuss. Until the next pod, stay safe. Bye-bye.